Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Hamza Tariq, Director of Marketing at Sirius Support. Welcome to our session on how to prepare for U.S. mandates for human customer support. By way of introduction, today's session is designed for leaders navigating the shift from AI-first support to compliance-driven human support. Hosting today's session is Craig Mills, CEO and co-founder of Sirius Support. Craig brings over 20 years of customer support leadership experience, serving organizations and customers around the world. He'll walk us through the pending legislation and share practical recommendations on how customer support leaders can adapt and stay ahead in this evolving regulatory landscape. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Craig Mills.
Thank you, Hamza. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining today's session. As Hamza mentioned, I'm Craig Mills, the CEO of Sirius Support. Based on the number of questions we've been getting from customers about emerging regulations and what that could mean for support operations, we've established this as a monthly update series built specifically for customer support leaders who want to stay informed and ready for the rules as they evolve. Each month, we'll bring you updates on the very latest, unpack those implications and share actionable guidance to help you prepare before those mandates arrive. Today's focus is on a major shift already reshaping how organizations think about service delivery. The move from AI-first support to compliance-driven human support. For years, automation has led the conversation. How to scale faster, handle more volumes at lower costs. But what we're now seeing from US regulators is a clear signal that a human fallback is no longer optional. That represents a real turning point, not just for compliance, but also for risk management and customer trust. At Sirius Support, we've built our reputation on helping organizations adapt quickly to change, whether that means scaling fast-growing businesses, supporting government agencies in disaster recovery, or now helping enterprises prepare for new regulatory requirements as they emerge. We're adept at rapid situation assessment and activation, ensuring that when conditions shift, whether driven by growth, crisis, or compliance, our clients can respond confidently and maintain continuity. You'll see plenty of data and insights today, because at Sirius, accountability and transparency are in our DNA. We believe in measurement, clarity, and performance that can be proven and not just promised. My goal today is that you leave with both a clear understanding of where the regulatory momentum stands today and practical ways to prepare your organization for what's next. So with that, let's start by looking at the current landscape, what's changed in the last month, and what signals we're seeing for the months ahead. So let's get started with why this moment really matters. According to McKinsey, AI tools now resolve 80% of customer support tickets across industries. And in some digital native sectors, that number is going to be even higher. That's an extraordinary efficiency gain. It's reduced average handling time, lowered costs, and allowed companies to scale service without scaling headcount. For many organizations, AI has become the backbone of customer experience. But here's where the tension lies. A 2025 CX Today survey found that 61% of customer experience leaders actually support government mandates requiring guaranteed access to a human agent. Think about that for a second. These aren't frustrated customers calling for change. These are the industry leaders themselves saying the pendulum has swung far too far towards automation. Why? Well, because AI resolves issues quickly, it often struggles with edge cases, empathy, or emotional nuance. The very moments that define brand trust. And customers feel it. A PwC survey, consumer survey earlier this year reported that nearly 60% of US consumers believe companies have lost touch with the human element in customer service. Research from Gartner echoes that, showing that when human interaction is absent in complex cases, customer churn risk increases by over 25%. Regulators are responding to that frustration. The message coming from Washington, Sacramento, and other capitals is clear. It's not about eliminating AI, it's about restoring accountability and human accessibility. So the question for your organization is this: if new laws require one press access to a live human agent, are your escalation paths strong enough to withstand that scrutiny? And that's what this entire series is about. Keep helping you to assess where you stand today and prepare for the environment that's very fast approaching. Here's the most important thing to understand with the regulatory landscape right now. This is no longer a question if a human access will matter. It's a question of how prepared you are for when it does. At the US federal level, we're seeing renewed momentum now that the shutdown is well behind us. The Keep Call Centers in America Act of 2025 remains in committee. But it's significant because it explicitly frames on-demand access to US-based human agents as a consumer expectation. Even before passage, bills like this shape how regulators, auditors, and customers think about acceptable support models. At the state level in the US, California continues to lead. SB 243 and AB 853 don't quite mandate human agents yet, but they establish the operational and disclosure foundation that future access requirements depend on. These laws are about accountability, knowing when AI is involved, documenting that behavior, and proving that there's a responsible human layer behind the system. In both Maine and New York, they reinforce that same theme. Disclosure laws may sound modest, but they create an implicit expectation. Once customers know that they're talking to AI, they naturally expect a clear, reliable path to a human when it matters. And we're seeing this pattern globally. In the EU, the AI Act is moving from implementation with explicit human oversight requirements. In markets like the UK, Canada, Australia, regulators are openly scrutinising AI-only customer journeys and signalling that human escalation is part of customer fairness. So the takeaway isn't that mandates are some far-off thing. The regulatory expectations are already forming, and the smartest organisations aren't waiting for that hard requirement. They're building elastic, compliant, human support layers now, so they can meet those rising expectations without overstaffing or scrambling later. And that's exactly where this elastic human model becomes not just a compliance strategy, but a true competitive advantage. Now, let's talk about risk exposure, because it's broader than most organizations really realize. According to the Phonimon Institute, the average cost of a non-compliance fine in the US is $4.4 million. And that's before you factor in legal costs, remediation, and the time and distraction that regulatory action brings. For larger enterprises operating in multiple jurisdictions, that risk multiplies quickly. And then there's the cost that doesn't show up on the balance sheet right away, the loss of trust. The Edelman Trust Barometer shows that 67% of consumers will switch brand when trust is broken. And in the context of customer support, that trust can be lost in an instant. One failed escalation, one opaque chatbot experience, or one customer that can't reach a human when it truly matters. Disclosure failures, unclear escalation paths, or inconsistent transparency directly erode that trust. And once lost, it's expensive and slow to rebuild. There's also operational exposure. If new rules mandate that companies provide access to US-based or human-certified support, organizations may suddenly need to expand or relocate staff to meet those requirements. That can mean higher labor costs, longer hiring cycles, and a need for rapid retraining or vendor transitions. Then you have commercial risk, which is often overlooked. Buyers, partners, and investors are already starting to ask for proof of compliance readiness. RFPs increasingly include questions about AI transparency, escalation guarantees, and human fallback processes. In other words, compliance is moving from a back office function into a frontline sales and trust signal. So the real question becomes, do you treat compliance as a cost center, something that you react to when you're forced to, or could it become a competitive differentiator? The companies that lean into that readiness now, who can demonstrate accountability, transparency, and resilience, will be the ones regulators trust, customers stay loyal to, and competitors chase. So let's shift gears and talk about what readiness actually looks like. A strong compliance playbook isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's going to be essential for every support organisation operating in customer support. Here's what that playbook should include. First, you need to map out which rules apply to your industry and geography. Start by identifying where your customers are and which jurisdictions could have oversight. Federal, state, or even international if you serve globally. For example, what applies to a health tech company under HIPAA will differ from what applies to an e-commerce brand under consumer protection law. Knowing your exposure zones early helps prevent scrambling later. Second, standardize your disclosures and escalation SLAs. If your AI interacts with customers, your disclosures should be consistent, clear, concise, and easy to verify. The same goes for escalation. If a customer requests a human, your service level commitments should be written, tracked, and auditable. A regulator isn't going to accept that it's handled differently by region as an answer. Third, implement real-time monitoring and auditing to ensure consistency. And this is where most organizations fall short. Gartner recently reported that 73% of firms do not have real-time monitoring in place for AI disclosures. That's a huge blind spot. It means the majority of companies couldn't easily prove compliance, even if they're doing the right thing operationally. Monitoring needs to be active, not reactive. Fourth, prepare for annual certifications or self-assessments that some laws may soon require. We're already seeing language in draft legislation that mirrors the SOC 2 or GDPR style certification models, where companies have to show, not just say, that they're being compliant. Building that documentation muscle now will pay off later. And finally, I'd ask you this question. If a regulator audited you today, could you prove that every AI interaction you disclosed, was it every human fallback request honoured? If the answer isn't an immediate yes, that's your signal to start building your playbook today. The organisations that get this right early will not just avoid the fines, but they'll also gain trust with customers, regulators, and their partners. That's where readiness becomes reputation and where compliance becomes a real competitive advantage. This quote really captures the mood of our industry right now. Laws should mandate the right to speak to a human. And what's interesting is this isn't coming from regulators or policymakers anymore. It's coming from the industry itself. As I referenced earlier on, CX leaders, operational heads, and even AI strategists are now saying it's time. The pendulum has swung too far towards automation, but customers and the professionals that serve them are calling for a reset. You can feel the alignment building. When customers, practitioners, and policymakers all start speaking the same language, the momentum becomes inevitable. And we've seen this pattern before in data privacy or cybersecurity. First, it's an expectation, then it becomes a differentiator, and finally it becomes a regulatory requirement. That's exactly where we are today with human access and customer support. The real strategic question every organisation should be asking is this. If your competitors start marketing their compliance, promoting guaranteed human access as part of their brand promise, how will you position yourself? Because that shift is coming. In fact, some forward-thinking brands are already running pilots where they feature a human certified support badge. Not because it's required yet, but because it builds trust, that credibility with your customers, and regulatory readiness. The companies that move first here will own the narrative. They'll not just be seen as reacting to the policy, but as leading the evolution of what responsible human-centered AI support looks like. For years, our industry has operated under a simple assumption, what we often call the 80-20 model. Roughly 80% of tickets could be handled by AI or automation, while the remaining 20% would escalate to human agents. That model worked beautifully for cost optimization. It allowed leaders to scale customer experience while controlling headcount and focusing human talent on high value or emotionally complex issues. But that old model is now being tested. Under the new regulatory direction, human fallback is no longer optional. It's expected and likely soon required. According to Forrester, 45% of firms currently rely on AI alone for more than 70% of their customer interactions. Organizations are the ones most at risk. When mandates come into effect, they'll face immediate exposure. Not because AI failed, but because their human layer isn't built to flex. And this isn't just about compliance risk, it's about resilience. If tomorrow 40% of your AI-handled tickets suddenly needed to route to a human, could your operation cope? Could you scale trained, brand-aligned human capacity within hours or days, not months? Because that's what regulators and customers are ultimately looking for, a reliable human safety net. The future of customer support isn't about abandoning AI. It's about building scalable blended models where automation and people work together seamlessly. The organizations that win won't be those that automate the fastest, but those that can flex the fastest, expanding or contracting their human layer in real time without losing quality or compliance. That's where agility becomes your competitive advantage. So let's talk about what we do with all of this. Well, the good news is there are practical strategies to add human capacity without ballooning your costs. This isn't about overbuilding teams or putting hundreds of agents on standby. It's about designing flexibility into your operating model. First, you can partner with an on-demand US-based agents. Many organizations are building relationships with elastic support partners, teams that can activate within days, not months, to meet compliance requirements or handle a sudden spike in volume. Second, you could use shared pools that multiple business units or product lines can access. Instead of siloed teams, shared pools create efficiency and coverage across time zones and functions. It's a smart way to scale without duplicating headcount. Third, consider a follow-the-sun staffing model. By distributing teams globally, you can maintain live human support around the clock without overburdening a single geography. This not only improves customer experience, but also provides redundancy if local capacity is constrained. And fourth, deploy predictive scheduling and ticket modeling. And AI can actually help here by forecasting ticket spikes and matching coverage to expected demand, ensuring you're right-sized hour by hour. These are some real levers that customer support leaders can pull today, not in theory, but in practice. And the market is clearly moving. The International Association of Outsourcing Professionals recently reported that 70% of BPO leaders plan to expand their US-based hiring this year. That tells you everything you need to know. Demand for compliant, domestic human capacity is rising, and fast. Which brings us to a critical question. If new regulations took effect tomorrow, do you already have a contingency partner who could add US-trained agents within 30 days? For organizations that don't, this is the moment to start identifying those partners, testing those relationships, and putting readiness plans in place. Because when the mandate arrives, agility won't be optional. It'll be the difference between compliance and chaos. As organizations move towards compliance-ready customer support, it's not just about adding human capacity. It's about evolving the routing logic that determines when and how humans step in. In the old automation mindset, the goal was to contain as many tickets as possible within AI. The success metric was deflection. But the new model, the success metric becomes appropriate escalation, knowing when AI is good enough and when it isn't. And here are 4 principles that every routing model needs to include. First, when AI confidence is low, the system should immediately escalate to a human. Don't let customers repeat themselves or get trapped in loops. Hand them off gracefully before that frustration builds. Second, customers should always have explicit transfer options to request a human at any time. Regulators are likely to require this, but even before they do, it's just good CX design. Giving customers agency builds trust. Third, any high risk or high value cases should default to a human. Things like billing disputes or healthcare inquiries or enterprise account issues. The reputational risk of mishandling those far outweighs any savings of automation. And fourth, your system must fail safe, meaning it should never block access or delay access to a human, even if a process breaks or a rule misfires. Think of it as the emergency exit in your customer experience architecture. Here's why that matters so much. PwC found that 89% of customers will leave a brand after just 2 bad service experiences. That's almost everyone gone. So escalation logic isn't just a compliance issue, it's a revenue protection strategy. Every failed handoff, every broke chatbot loop isn't just a bad experience, it's lost lifetime value. The real question to ask your team is this: does your system actually know when AI is good enough and when it isn't? Because in a compliance-driven environment, that awareness, that ability to hand off intelligently, becomes the new measure of maturity. All right, let's bring it down to something practical. Here's what a phased roadmap to compliance readiness looks like. Think of it as your playbook from we should probably start thinking about this to we're globally compliant and ready for anything. Phase 0, assess the gaps. Before you do anything, you get clear on where you stand today. Map your current support flows, your AI escalation paths, your disclosure language, and identify where the cracks are. You can't fix what you can't see, and most companies haven't looked closely yet. Then design and pilot your fallback. Don't wait for the legislation to force your hand. Build and test a fallback to human workflow now. Even a small pilot gives you data, proof points, and confidence that your systems can adapt. Phase 2, scale and certify compliance. Once you've proven the model works, scale it across your organization. Document it, audit it, and make sure you can prove consistency. When certification requirements arrive, and they will, you'll be ready instead of scrambling. Phase 3, optimize and stress test capacity. Run simulations. Ask, what if AI goes down for a day? What if 40% of my tickets suddenly need human handling? The goal here isn't perfection, but it is resilience under pressure. Phase 4, globalize your approach. As new regulations roll out in the EU, the UK, and parts of Asia Pacific, the smartest organizations are harmonizing compliance across all of the jurisdictions. One framework, one standard, many tickets. And here's the reality check. CCW Digital recently found that only 22% of firms have even piloted a compliance fallback model. That means nearly 80% are still waiting, hoping the rules will clarify before they act. But here's the thing. By the time the rules are final, it'll be too late to start from zero. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you waiting for the law, or are you piloting now so you're ready for when it lands? Because readiness isn't just compliance, it's competitive advantage. And this roadmap is about how you get there before anybody else does. Let's take a moment to recap what we've covered so far and where this all points to next. First, US regulations are clearly moving towards mandated human fallback. The writing is on the wall. Customers must have access to a human, and that access must be provable. Second, compliance and customer trust are no longer separate conversations. They've merged. How you meet regulatory expectations will directly shape how customers perceive your brand. Compliance has become the new trust currency. Third, the old 80-20 AI to human model, 80% handled by AI or automation and 20% escalated to customers, to humans rather, is evolving fast. The next generation of customer support isn't about choosing between automation or empathy. It's about designing a system where both work in perfect sync, scalable, compliant, and ready for anything. And that's exactly why that phase roadmap we discussed is so powerful. It gives you a path to transform without disruption. Step by step, you can evolve your operation, strengthen your fallback capacity, and build trust before mandates arrive. And here's the reality check. Salesforce research shows that 71% of customers expect the ability to talk to a human at any point in their journey. That's not just a niche preference or a legacy expectation. That's the new baseline. Customers want both the speed of AI and the safety of a human connection. The companies that can deliver that balance will redefine what great service looks like. So as we look ahead, the opportunity isn't just to stay compliant, it's to lead the industry towards a model of humanized AI support that customers actually trust and love. That's the future we're building, and one every forward-thinking support organization should start creating right now. So before we wrap up, let me share a quick perspective on who we are at Sirius Support and why this conversation matters to us so much. Sirius Support is a global BPO partner trusted by organizations in some of the most heavily regulated sectors in the world: finance, health, fintech, and beyond. Compliance isn't an add-on for us. It's built into our operating model. From data handling to escalation protocols, we design every process to meet the highest standards of accountability and transparency. We offer flexible staffing across the US, nearshore, and global locations, giving clients the reach and agility they need to meet evolving regulations without overextending resources. Clients trust us because we keep performance visible, measurable, and consistent. And that's reflected in one key metric: a 95% client retention rate year after year. The takeaway is simple. We don't just provide outsourced agents. We deliver compliance-ready, customer-centric support that scales with your business. That's what makes Sirius different. And it's exactly that kind of capability companies will need as these new rules take shape. Let me give you a quick example of what that looks like in practice. One of our long-term clients, Fi, the leading smart collar company for pets, came to us just before their seasonal peak a few years ago. They were growing at an incredible pace. Orders were surging, new customers were coming in every day, and the internal support team was completely maxed out. They knew that Black Friday that year would push them over the edge if they didn't act fast. We partnered with Fi that summer to get ahead of the curve. Within just a few weeks, we scaled the support team from 3 agents to more than 20. Fully trained, brand aligned, and ready to handle the rush. When peak season hit and volume spiked, Fi's support operation didn't just hold steady. They achieved a 98% customer satisfaction score right through Black Friday, one of the toughest stress tests for any brand. That's the power of planning ahead and getting in early, building flexible, scalable, compliance-ready support. It doesn't just keep you out of risk. It helps your brand shine under pressure and deliver exceptional experiences when it matters most. That's what readiness looks like, turning pressure into performance and growth into loyalty. Before we close today's session, let's talk about where you can go from here and how we can help you take the next practical steps. First, the regulatory readiness assessment. This gives you a clear picture of your current support model and how it aligns with emerging US and global mandates. We'll pinpoint exactly where your compliance gaps are and what actions you will need to make to be audit ready and future proof. It's fast, precise, and actionable. Second, the ROI calculator. This tool lets you model the financial impact of augmenting your in-house AI support with flexible human coverage. It quantifies not just cost savings, but the value of resilience, how to meet rising customer expectations today and prepare for tomorrow's rules. Third, the strategy session. This is where we'll collaborate directly with your leadership team. We'll map your support strategy, compliance readiness, and growth objectives into one unified plan, tailored to your industry, scale, and goals. According to Deloitte, early movers in compliance cut their operational costs by nearly 30% compared to late adopters. That's proof that proactive beats reactive every time. So the message here is simple. Acting now isn't about avoiding penalties. It's about building advantage. I encourage you to start with one of these steps, whether it's the assessment, the calculator, or the strategy session, and begin turning compliance readiness into a genuine competitive edge. The organizations that prepare early won't just comply, they'll lead. So as we close, regulations requiring human support are on their way, and the human fallback is fast becoming the new standard for trust and compliance. At Sirius Support, we're here to help you prepare, scale, and stay ahead, turning readiness into real competitive advantage. Again, I'm happy to jump on a call with you and discuss your specific requirements. Just indicate in the chat and Hamza will reach out and schedule some time for us. So finally, remember, the future belongs to the organizations that act early and build confidently. Thank you for joining us today and for being part of this important conversation. Wishing you a great rest of the day, and we'll see you all next month for our next update.